This GeekWire podcast is brought to you by BECU. Stay tuned to the break as Brian Westbrook interviews BECU's Stacy Black for today's Money Hack about financial strategies for navigating unexpected career change. For more money hacks, check out geekwire.com/BECU.
The last couple of days have been bumpy, right?
Yeah.
In terms of like compute capacity at ChatGPT.
Oh,
and
yeah.
You're right. Like, you kind of have to lean in, but you can't just expect this thing to be a straight line.
It's like you're describing an employee who's coming in from the weekend with a hangover.
Let's hope it doesn't start drinking.
Welcome to GeekWire. I'm GeekWire co-founder Todd Bishop. My guests today are Adam Brotman and Andy Sack, co-authors of the book AI First, the playbook for a future-proof business and brand. Adam Brotman was Starbucks chief digital officer and later co-CEO of J.Crew. Andy Sack is a founder, investor, and longtime advisor to tech leaders, and together they run Forum 3, a company that helps brands rethink loyalty and customer engagement. Their book argues that the winners in this era will be truly AI first, human plus machine, co-pilots and agents baked into the work. We're going to talk about their holy shit moment with Sam Altman, the banker who did a week's worth of work in 36 hours, and what leaders should actually be doing. Adam and Andy, it's great to have you here.
Todd, so great to be here in person.
Great to be here.
That's right. So I've got Andy in the office in Fremont in Seattle, and Adam is piping in on Google Meet. But, a lot of people know both of you from your work at major companies with Adam and also with you, Andy. You've worked at companies including Microsoft, and you've worked in the startup world. What made you decide that this AI moment was worth the journey that you took in this book? Why'd you do it? Andy, why don't you start?
Sure. So ChatGPT 3.5 launched in November of 22. And in December, I was like, Adam, have you checked out this AI tool? We were already in business, but our business narrowed its focus on generative AI at that point. I guess, for lack of a better term, it was the intuition of having been through the launch of the internet and the mobile era that we were like, oh, this is a big deal. And we need to educate ourselves. We were in conversation with Harvard Press at that time to do a book. And we were like, oh, can we do a book on AI? And they said, sure. And so originally the book was titled Our AI Journey. And the book is now out and it's called AI First. And it was a journey.
My big takeaway was get off your butt and get into this thing. I mean, that could have been the alternative title. Maybe it could have been the subtitle. Am I on the right track there?
You are, Todd. You are.
Yeah, this is your message to businesses.
Yeah, I really wanted to call the book The Holy Shit Moment, which I only got the first chapter titled to that. But your summary in my language is The Holy Shit Moment.
It's interesting because this technology, in some senses, was very familiar to Andy and I, as in we've spent our careers looking around the corner and seeing what digital or technology trends and new innovations are coming the way towards businesses. And then we spent our whole career translating that for businesses. That's either as an entrepreneur, as an executive, as an advisor, like that, as a board member, that's what we do. So when we peeked around the corner and saw this technology coming and how fast it was coming, it was both familiar and not familiar. It was familiar in the sense of like, yeah, that's what we do. Here comes another innovation. But it was very unfamiliar to have something that is this powerful, where it's not really a technology implementation, but it's actually a business implementation, and how fast it was going to move and how pervasive and general purpose it was. So we were both like, we have a muscle that knows how to deal with this, and a part of us that didn't. And so we thought we got to go to school. And that's actually, we both are kind of curious guys, and we try to do this stuff, but we really needed to learn. And we spent a good year like going deep on this. And that's part of what we wrote about, but also it's really fueled our thinking on this stuff at this point.
Well, what somebody who reads this book will walk away with is essentially a playbook in a lot of ways. And you talk about this AI first mindset as a mix of the growth mindset, which a lot of people know about, and the lean startup. So what's the most important part of that recipe, and how do they work together for this AI first playbook?
I mean, the most important part, in my opinion, is the mindset.
Yeah.
Right? Which is building on what Adam said. while this is built with technology, this is not a technology, this is an intelligence. And the intelligence is advancing insanely fast. And so the sooner you start to interact with that intelligence and play with that intelligence and find out its great points and its limitations, the better.
Right. And normally when you deal with software or technology, you plan something out and you build it and it works or it doesn't work. Or it works, but it doesn't work well enough and you have to keep building it. In this case, the human-like non-deterministic nature of this it made it really hard to write a playbook, because we talked to Bill Gates and we talked to Sam Altman, we talked to Mustafa Suleyman and Reid Hoffman, all these like leaders that are like the people building this technology. And we asked them, why are you building this? Where are you going with this? And we realized that the playbook was not the kind of playbook that we would normally give somebody, which is very discreet. We realized the playbook was a mindset. It was, you got to, like Andy just said, you got to use it. You got to learn it. You got to stay up to date on it. You got to experiment, fail, push yourself. Even at the end of our book, we talk about building a lab, which is crazy when people are just now trying to figure out how they could even use it at all at work. And we're talking about building a lab. So it's this weird thing where we had to sort of thread the needle between, get off your butt, like you said, get on this. But if you're looking for like an exact answer of how you should use it, like this is the AI bot you should build, that's not the playbook. The playbook is much more transformational and mindset oriented.
One of the things that struck me was that in many cases, it was the leaders in the case studies that you were writing about who were driving the change. And it created this whole other dynamic. Like if you compare it to a lot of the bottoms-up adoption that you might see with something like collaboration with Slack, it was just totally different. And it was in some ways empowering for the organization because the leader was able to say, hey, this is what is going to drive us forward. But it also created this different kind of psychology because the leader had to bring everybody along with him or her. So how do you adjust to that if you're a business leader out there saying, hey, my organization has got to get on this, but some of my employees are skeptical? Like, how do you deal with that?
You buy this book, AI First, Playbook for Future-Proofing Your Business and Brand. Adam and I have been saying that AI First companies start with AI First leaders. And there is an important bottoms-up motion that's important to get going or to initiate. However, the CEOs that play with AI and have their holy shit moment and go, oh my gosh, this is what this can do for me, either in my personal life or my professional life, and it enhanced my work. Imagine what this could do if I just gave it to everybody, and imagine what it could do if we started to interact with our customers in different ways. You really need the leader to have that aha moment. And when that aha moment takes force, then the leader, like the application of the culture meets the digital transformation, like there's just a lot of change that needs to happen. And so the leader absolutely needs to be involved.
Yeah. And I would just add that it doesn't mean that the CEO, doesn't mean that he or she has to become an expert in AI, but they have to at least demonstrate that mindset, that curiosity, and a little bit of even passion for what they don't know, and empower the organization to go ahead and like put responsible guardrails in place, put people in place that could sort of build this out and propel the organization forward. And that's the key. I mean, Todd, as you know, like at Starbucks, for example, Howard gets a ton of credit. I mean, he gets most of the credit for the digital success of the company because he was the one that said, he always did. I mean, long before I was at Starbucks and after, like Howard was always the one that had the instinct, as he does on everything in a lot of ways, but he had the instinct to say, I don't understand what the digital strategy for Starbucks should be, but I know that this technology, the internet and computers and social and cloud and mobile even, are going to be something that we could be weaving into the fabric of how we interact with customers and how we provide convenience and connection. And he was like, Adam and team, go figure it out. And that's the kind of mindset and leadership that you need in the AI world, even though it's totally a different transformation, different technology, different use cases. It's that same leadership principle that applies here.
And so you're talking about something like an AI counsel, a chief AI officer, somebody the equivalent of the chief digital officer at Starbucks, but for AI in this case, who can lead the charge.
Yeah, we are saying that, and we actually write about that in the book specifically. We actually have a section on it. However, for people listening, I don't want you to think that you need to go hire some chief AI officer right away. Like, that's not what we're saying in the book or just in general. It's in fact, I think for most companies, even big companies, it's more of like, when we say counsel, you could substitute task force or AI champions team. It's probably half a dozen cross-functional folks that are passionate about the topic with at least one C-suite member in there, and that's been given the seal of the office of the CEO to like go be curious and push. And it's probably part-time job at first, and it has a leader, and eventually that leader of the task force or council becomes your chief AI officer. But don't feel like you got to go all the way to Bright to just get moving here. But the key is to just get moving.
I think a lot of people, when they come to AI, oftentimes can be disappointed because they have the amount of media attention in some respects has risen the level of expectations. And yet I remember when we had a follow-up conversation with Bill Gates at post-book, and we take for granted that AI can instantly translate this podcast into 138 languages, is what he said. And like, that was only possible like 2 years ago. And oh, by the way, it took Microsoft 18 years they were working on translation software to do that, and AI did it, and it's now available 130, and everyone's just like, oh yeah, ho hum, what's next? And so expectations are off. It's really a desire to interact with this new type of software, which we term this alien intelligence.
Adam, you said something earlier that really resonated with me, and that is the way that this technology is changing, and you're alluding to that as well, Andy. I experienced this just with Gemini and ChatGPT over the past week. There's this specific fact-checking function that I rely on Gemini for, or at least I did rely on it before apparently Google made some sort of update to it or something, because I like to take a story when it's done, put it into Gemini, upload my source material, and say, hey, check everything, make sure everything's right. Interview transcripts, reports, everything that I'm using. And for some reason, Gemini just stopped doing that. And I've had similar experiences with ChatGPT-5 over the past week, where things that it used to do really effectively, it doesn't do quite as well anymore. How do you adjust for that? And how do you build a business around that when the very technology is not even deterministic, is not even certain, as you're saying?
I would say you're bringing up an excellent point. Like, it is especially in the last week, ChatGPT just came out with ChatGPT 5. They've had some bumps in the road. They've improved some things. Gemini is doing the same thing. And you're just like, what? This is part of that thing we said earlier, where this is unlike other technology, right? It's more like a human, where, they're going along and they're sort of progressing, and then they sort of develop different skills, and they used to be better at some things than others. And what I'd say to anyone listening in terms of a mindset is, it's a growth mindset. You have to have a curiosity and be fascinated by what is changing, what is improving, and just go into it knowing that this is not deterministic software. Like people talk about, it hallucinates, and then there's this whole discussion about whether or not that's a feature or a bug. But the truth is, this whole thing is evolving. It makes mistakes, it changes. You can't think of this like a technology implementation. You have to have this always on experimentation mindset, because they're pushing. We talked about this in the book. The leaders of these labs, I'm talking about all of them. If you actually sat down with all of them and like lined up what they're doing, they're actually trying to create this thing called artificial general intelligence, or even super intelligence, and they're pushing towards that. And so you're going to see this stuff change, improve, add capabilities, and you got to kind of go along for the ride and stay up with it best you can, and anticipate where the puck is going, not just where it is now, because otherwise you're just going to get frustrated. You're either going to get caught from behind, or you're going to get frustrated with how fast it's changing. That sometimes those changes are and positive, but sometimes they're frustrating, but you got to go along for the ride.
Well, it's funny. You mentioned the positive changes. The one great thing about GPT-5, from my experience so far, you mentioned the hallucinations maybe being a feature or a bug. I will tell you, for me and my profession, they are definitely a bug. And the one thing that I could never get GPT-4 in its various incarnations to do was to accurately quote people in direct quotes out of a transcript. It was awful. I would scold it. I got really kind of mean with it, and it just would not come around to quoting people directly. GPT-5 so far, it seems to be just right on the mark. And I'm using it in a way that I'm double checking everything. I mean, I'm going from Claude to Gemini to ChatGPT to my own eyes and everything. But it really can be something that is good in terms of its evolution, in addition to not being great.
Let me just chime in, because I think it goes back to that mindset and that curiosity, which is, this is a new thing. This is not software. We're talking about it as if it's a being, an alien intelligence. And as a result of that, we're all collectively trying to figure out how does a business operate when the LLM changes, and it last week couldn't transcribe, but this week can. And last week it could fact check, or it couldn't fact check, or it did fact check, and this week it doesn't. That's just going to continue to happen. Imagine, I think within the next 12 months, you're going to have businesses that have dozens or hundreds or even thousands of agents that are being deployed and alongside humans. And so increasingly businesses are going to be built in this hybrid human agentic fashion. And what happens when the LLM changes and suddenly the power goes off and the agents can't do what they've been doing, and you built them all on OpenAI, but it's and you didn't build them on Gemini, and OpenAI is down for a month. That's
hopefully it won't be down for a month, but
you understand my point. My point.
It's
a
like
day, a month.
An hour even.
It's like you're talking about
an hour. If it has problems for an hour, or even the last, let's hit your point, Andy, the last couple of days have been bumpy, right?
Yeah.
In terms of compute capacity at ChatGPT, and you're right. You kind of have to lean in, but you can't just expect this thing to be a straight line.
Well, and to that point, being able to switch out multiple LLMs, not being totally reliant on one provider, there are aspects, just in the same way that businesses sort of store all their data on either Azure or AWS, but they don't want to be reliant on just one provider. I think similarly, you're gonna want multiple LLMs, and you're gonna want multiple approaches to be able to deal with the insanely fast advancing alien intelligence.
It's like you're describing an employee who's coming in from the weekend with a hangover,
Yeah.
It's like you gotta deal almost like personnel issues with these AI agents or the AI bots. Or
let's hope it doesn't start drinking.
we and all kidding aside, when we do our boot camps for businesses to teach them how to be an AI first organization, it's kind of a combination of transformation consulting, strategic consulting, and training. One of the top core principles or first principles we teach organizations is think of this more like a human resource transformation than a technology transformation, and all the way down to the prompting. The best prompting tips you can give somebody is talk to this like a person, talk to the AI like a person, and set the stage. So if you had a brand new employee come along, you would sort of say, okay, let me explain something to you. This is who we are as a company. This is what we do. So you talk like a person. A lot of people, they make the mistake, even in prompting, of talking to the AI like it's Google or something. They sort of think there's magic words to say, and they're not realizing this is not a retrieval system. This is a generative system. And the more you talk to it like a human, the more likely you are to actually prompt well, and to actually also be smart about the results. Check your results. Be discerning. Iterate. Don't just assume it's correct or smart every time. Be the human in the loop.
The issue of prompts gets to one of my favorite parts of the book, and that is your Moderna case study. And so I want to get into that when we come back. You're listening to GeekWire, and we will be right back.
Brian Westbrook at GeekWire Studios. We have Money Hacks presented by BECU, joined now by Stacey Black, lead financial educator. This episode's topic is all about career change, whether you're changing your jobs, you're faced with an unfortunate layoff, or you have a windfall like the lottery. What is the plan that covers all of that?
In all of those scenarios, it's important to have a plan in place, and that includes a budget, a plan for savings, a plan for spending even.
I love that. We've got a lot more in this episode of Money Hacks presented by BECU. I'm Brian Westbrook. Check it out at geekwire.com/BECU. Stacey, my plan is to win the lottery.
Me too.
Listen to the full interview and find more episodes of Money Hacks at geekwire.com/BECU and find more information at becu.org. Welcome back. It's Todd Bishop. My guests this week are Andy Sack and Adam Brotman. Their new book is called AI First. And as a reporter, I have to tell you, I loved what you did with Moderna as authors because there was an OpenAI case study. It was kind of a brief customer story that you saw. And the two of you in the book went, wait a second, there's got to be more here. And you went and you did interviews with the people at Moderna. I loved it. What did you learn from Moderna about how to implement an AI-first mindset in a company?
The first thing we learned was the lesson that we've already said, which is AI-first companies start with AI-first leaders. It was a real case study in leadership from both the CEO of Moderna all the way down to the head of AI at Moderna, a guy named Bryce Chalamet. This is this amazing guy and character in the book, if you will, because he, to your point, when we dug underneath the high level quotes from the CEO and whatnot, we discovered that Moderna had hired effectively the foremost AI transformation expert on the planet, who had come out of Boston Consulting Group in Europe and then had been the top AI consulting transformational expert at Google. They brought him and some of his team on board. And similar to the story we told earlier, the CEO said, I believe the only way that we can scale and meet our needs and our demands as a company are to fully go all in on AI. That came from the CEO, but he didn't know how to do it. So he brought in somebody who did and would lead that. And then we learned from there a whole series of lessons around how you excite and energize the whole company around AI, including, they did a promptathon contest, and they really integrated the launch of that contest in the culture of the company by giving prizes that they knew their company would want, which is like all expense paid trips to go visit the AI leaders, because they're sort of a research-based, science-based company. They also had the CEO launch the whole thing with, video podcast. And so it was just a great opportunity for us to learn, what does bright look like here? Not saying that everyone should go do what they did, but I mean, look, they ended up, in the book, we talked about how they ended up executing on this, bringing in the right leaders, kicking it off the right way. And as a result, got, 80% participation in the company. We followed up with them after the book and had Bryce on our podcast. And he was telling us that they're well into the millions of chats per month now as a company. And, so you're just seeing, like, if you want to see what in the future it looks like to truly integrate this technology, and the ROI has been off the chart, as they've said, in terms of productivity from them as a company.
The thing that struck me about that, and you're getting at this, Adam, it was fun. They made it fun for the employees to figure this stuff out. And I think a lot of people, like, at least in my case, I'm like, of course it's fun. It's freaking AI, man. And I have to recognize sometimes that not everybody is quite the geek that I am, to the point that they are just going to, spend their weekends vibe coding, so to the point of what Moderna did, they really understood that and said they were going to make it into like a bit of a contest. It was kind of cool.
They made it fun. Bryce made it fun. The thing that struck me about, shout out to Bryce. He was really, the whole process of writing this book was an education and a journey. But Bryce, I'm glad you picked out on that chapter. I think we spent 2 chapters on Moderna, because after we spoke to all the LLM leaders, it was really like, okay, how does this apply to CEOs and business, and what are the implications of this, and looking for case studies. Bryce, there was something that he said that has stuck with me. He said it, I mean, I think we did the interview about a year ago. And the thing that he said that resonated with me was that humans like change, was totally counterintuitive. And he's like, they like change as long as they're made to feel comfortable and safe. I.e., you go to different restaurants every day, he says. And, you're not afraid to try a new restaurant. In fact, you might even want to try a new restaurant as long as you feel comfortable and safe in the neighborhood with the type of food, etc. And when he framed it that way, because the rule in business is like, there's the book about who moved my cheese and change is to be feared. And it's true. Humans don't like change when it's involved, when they feel unsafe and it's fear-based. And that really human emotional understanding of change is really profound.
What's the best use case, the best example, the specific thing that either of you, ran across in your work on this book that just sticks with you, that you would bring up at a cocktail party that says, hey, this is a sign of what companies are doing that points to the potential of AI in the future?
Probably Matt Britton at Suzy. I mean, in terms of like a specific, easy to talk about at a cocktail party example, here's the CEO of a company that provides consumer research services for brands that basically can spin up an on-demand focus group. And they've got, hundreds of big national consumer brands that they work with. And most of what they do is do account management and sales calls. So he said he was sitting there realizing that he's got transcripts of all these calls and that data could actually power their company, because he can't read all those transcripts. But if he had the time to read all those transcripts, he would tell every single account manager and sales manager how to improve, where there was likelihood to churn, where there's an opportunity to upsell and convert. But he can't do that. But he was an enthusiast. He was curious. He had that mindset, and he was studying what ChatGPT was doing. He goes, I can ask ChatGPT. This is a CEO, non-technical, by the way, saying, because I'm playing with ChatGPT, I know that I could ask ChatGPT, how would I build an app to basically have ChatGPT read all my transcripts in a safe, confidential way, and then create an alert system using my own thoughts in a rubric to basically clone me as the CEO, so that I can scale, read all the transcripts through the AI. And he basically self-built a tool that did this and was able to triple his sales with actually a 15% reduction in his sales force. So it was a great case study.
I agree with that case study, and yet I would not use that case study at a party as the example. What I've learned—
You're much more fun at a party than I am.
What I've learned, actually, at Forum 3, we're talking to executive CEOs, boards all the time. And what I've learned is, in talking to them, the example that resonates the most is, I've learned that there's a huge gap between people's understanding of the alien intelligence and what it's capable of. And so the example I tell them is, go download ChatGPT on your mobile phone, go take a picture of open your refrigerator, take a picture of what's inside, and ask ChatGPT you want 5 different suggestions of snacks that can be made in less than 15 minutes, and upload the photo. And when people do that and you hear that example, it's such a simple example. It's human. Everyone can relate to it. Everyone has everyone has a refrigerator in the United States. And so, like, when people do that, they start that aha moment, that holy shit moment. That's my answer to your question.
How are you using AI in your day-to-day work, the two of you?
We use it all the time. Like, it used to be that my favorite piece of software— I had 2 favorite pieces of software. It was Google Maps and Excel, Microsoft Excel. Today, I would say it's ChatGPT. And we were on a podcast yesterday, and the idea came up that we were like, we should try to use ChatGPT all day, every day for 1 week, and only use ChatGPT as the piece of software. That's been floating around between Adam and I told one of our employees that, and he's 22, he's younger. And he was like, I do that. He's like, I wake up in the morning and I go to my workout and I log my workout. And I was like, I did this with this many weights, and I felt like this. It felt a little too heavy. And then The next day, the memory is now there. It's planning his next workout. He asks what he should eat for breakfast. He asks where he should eat breakfast. He's turning to ChatGPT all the time for both personal and work. And I'm going to try it for a week. I mean, Adam and I talked about doing it and actually having podcasts about it on a daily basis. We'll see if we actually do it.
Yeah, I would say that question, how are we using it? It's funny. First of all, the true answer, and one of the best answers I heard somebody say to me is every 10 minutes. This was funny because you didn't mean it that way, and I didn't mean it that way the first time I asked somebody that question. But I said, which one are you using? How are you using it? How often? And so they thought they didn't know how to answer. They said every 10 minutes. Like I don't even know how to answer that. I'm using it so much. And that's actually the truth of how Andy and I use it. I will say one specific example, more in the vein of how you meant it, is if you use it a lot and you experiment with it, you understand what works well and what doesn't. And one of the things you'll also do is you'll get progressively braver about how you use it. And you'll start to realize that there aren't very many limits to what it can be helpful on. And I don't know how to write code, but over the weekend, I vibe coded for real. I know it's sort of a funny term, but I just used my own natural language voice, and I used the voice mode, and I said, I've got a client meeting and I want to explain this concept, and you could help me with a presentation, but since you're so good at coding, this is what I said to the AI, by the way, verbatim. This was my prompt. Since you're so good at coding, can you make me a web app that actually not only displays the thing I want to display in a presentation, and I'd already given it the prompt for the presentation, but I want you to make an interactive web app that makes my presentation more interactive and more interesting. And I couldn't believe that in the first try. I sent it to Andy 5 minutes later. I was like, I couldn't believe what it created. It was not only did it make the presentation better, but the interactivity worked. And I showed it to the client. It was a big hit. And I was able to actually demonstrate sort of the power of AI while doing a presentation on AI. So that's just a good example of I wasn't even thinking about doing that. I was just playing around with it. And I was able to sort of learn what it could do. And that's why it's so important that you experiment with this thing. It's why the CEO needs to play with it. It's why everybody just needs to not worry about being a prompt engineer or what am I going to do with it? Just start talking to it like a human, and you'll be amazed at what it can do. And then pretty soon everyone will be using it every 10 minutes.
You said you're so good at coding. Do you think the sucking up helped?
Yeah. It's funny. Everyone always asks us in our prompt, class, does it help to be polite, right? And apparently the research says that it doesn't, although earlier versions of the AI, believe it or not, it apparently did help to tell it how important the project was.
Offer to tip it $20.
Yeah, you could offer to tip it. Apparently there were studies that showed that those things might have been effective. It wasn't conclusive, but what I say is, in all seriousness, if you are polite, there's actually one of the prompting schools of thought is this thing that says, always say please and thank you, because it will encourage you to exercise the muscle memory of talking to it like a human. Yeah. And Mom, when I said you're so good at coding, I'm a polite guy, I think, generally speaking. And so, but it put me in the mode of just talking to it like I would talk to somebody else, as opposed to trying to think hard about my words and what I was, the substance had to be just perfect. You don't need to be perfect when you prompt. You just need to lay the groundwork, set the context, and let the AI, do the work.
Be a good person and a good communicator. I got to work on that, because I got to tell you, I sort of use the AI as an opportunity to get my crankiness out of my system. And maybe it's actually working against me now that you're saying this.
No, your family might thank you.
Yeah, it's two different things. Maybe either I'm just sort of getting in the habit of being cranky with the AI, so I'm cranky with everybody else, or I'm getting it out of my system. I don't know. But what you said there, you're good at coding. It's kind of like what I would say to somebody else in the house when I wanted to have them make dinner. You're so good at cooking.
Yeah, it's true. But you think about it for a second. When I said you're so good at coding, because that's my natural way of complimenting, or in your case, manipulating somebody into doing something. But it also was I didn't mean to, but I set some context by doing it. I was I let it know, I'm actually going to ask you to do some coding here. So there's elements of people and business leaders that probably wonder, like, I wonder what I would do with it. Can it really help me? And, we just really advise people to ask the AI how the AI can help you. Just slow down and just start playing with it, and you'll be amazed.
You tell the story in the book of a young associate at a top U.S. bank. I think this is one of my favorite anecdotes. This associate uses AI to complete his week's work in a day and a half, and his bosses are completely unaware. I loved this story. What is the biggest lesson a CEO should take away from that anecdote?
I mean, I think that behavior, I don't know if that was definitely over a year ago. It was probably 18 months ago. I remember when we heard it. I think that's happening everywhere in the United States, at every corporation, when there isn't a clear policy of encouragement and permission to utilize AI. I have a son who's just graduated from university. All the people coming out of university, they use AI all the time for everything. And so that's the AI generation. He happened to be in the sort of one of the 4 years that, like, one of the last that won't be exclusively AI. It was a hybrid in that sense. And so I think that anecdote became very clear that young people in positions all over were using AI to do their work and doing it well and more quickly.
And it sounds like as a CEO, you need to be aware of what's happening so that you know that potentially that young employee was doing that or had the capability of at least doing that.
Yeah, that's why you got to get with the program.
Yes. Okay. Did you use AI to help write the book?
No. I mean, we would have if we were allowed to, but our publisher prohibited it for copyright reasons. So we didn't.
Oh.
But there's no question. If that wasn't the case, we would have. It would have been a better book if we had. But it was all organic human writing from Andy.
We did use AI to prepare for interviews.
Yeah.
So there was that.
But it's not as if the bot was actually putting the words on the page that ended up in the book. Okay. I alluded to this at the very beginning, and we're probably going to have to put an explicit tag on the podcast for the number of times we've said holy shit. But you did have a holy shit moment with Sam Altman in the interview that you did with him. And I want to talk about that when we come back. You're listening to GeekWire, and we will be right back. Welcome back. It's Todd Bishop. I'm speaking this week with Adam Brotman and Andy Sack, co-authors of the book AI First, the playbook for a future-proof business and brand. We're talking about some very nitty-gritty stuff here that's actually very useful and practical, but you, at the very beginning of the book, had a very far-reaching kind of realization with Sam Altman of OpenAI. Tell me about your holy shit moment that kind of shaped the rest of the book.
Sure. Adam and I, through relationships, got introduced to Sam Altman. I actually knew Sam Altman when he was at Y Combinator.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And I was at Techstars, and so we had interacted. He was in my Gmail inbox. But anyways, he agreed to do the interview. We flew down to San Francisco to meet with him. This is almost exactly a year after ChatGPT 3.5 had launched. He was not at the time the world figure that he is today. And we went to the OpenAI headquarters, which was in an industrial sort of nondescript part of San Francisco. And we walked up to the building. We were both aware that there weren't security around everywhere. We went into the building, and we then proceeded to have an hour conversation with Sam, and he was engaged and polite and kind and friendly. During the interview, he talked about how he wakes up every morning, and yes, he's CEO, but he's really chief researcher, and he's really driven by the research and the desire to get to AGI. And we were asking him at the time about marketing and design, because we had a particular interest at Forum 3 about the implications of AI in marketing and customer acquisition. And Sam's response was, I don't know that much about design or marketing, but I think the exact quote was 95% of marketing as people think about it today will be done by AGI within 3 to 5 years.
That had to be a huge eye-opener.
Yeah, so he throws that out as just 2/3 of the way through the interview. The interview ends. We step outside. We walk across the street to a park in San Francisco, and we start walking around the park. And Adam's like, did he just say that 95% of marketing as we know it's going to be done by AGI? And that was the holy shit. And we're like, whoa. Like, that was our holy shit moment that we knew we had a lot to learn, but I think coming out of that, our eyes opened in ways that we hope the readers of the book eyes open.
Yeah, Andy's exactly right in two ways in particular. One was that actually really changed the trajectory of how we thought about AI, and also how we thought about our book and even our company, because we obviously understood enough from seeing and playing with ChatGPT 3.5 and 4 at that point to be like, this is amazing. Wow. Like, this is going to change a lot of things and we better learn about it. But we didn't really appreciate the pace at which all these labs were going to try to push this. And by the way, that comes with a lot of potential issues, right? You got safety issues that were not being raised in any of our conversations, which is a side note. Not because they're not thinking about it, because we weren't asking about it because we were still new, but we were like, oh, wow, like, this isn't just interesting technology, but it's going to change the world. And, right now it's sort of obvious in some ways that it's going to change the world. I mean, maybe not everyone feels that way, but we do. Like, that this is going to change the world. I mean, much like the internet changed the world, and this is probably as or more profound than that. But we weren't thinking that at that time necessarily. We understood it was powerful technology, but we thought, yeah, maybe in 10 or 15 or 20 years, not in 5 years. Like, and by the way, if you look at how the technology has progressed since we've had that interview, it's right on schedule. I don't know when we're going to hit AGI, and we talk in the book about what does artificial general intelligence mean, but we were, so that was for us, the biggest thing that caused us to just kind of be stunned was, yeah, we weren't thinking about this quite as seriously as we probably should be, and we should probably write about that. We should probably, and it kind of led us on our journey to talk to Reid Hoffman, because we sort of daisy chain these conversations. We're like, hey, Reid, we just talked to Sam, and he was saying this, like, help us understand that more. And then in the next chapter, Reid was like, yeah, this is going to be about like 10xing your intelligence, et cetera. So that holy shit moment with Sam affected us, and it actually affected the trajectory of the book and even everything Andy and I have done since.
You mentioned some of the safety issues, and it strikes me whenever I have these conversations, my natural inclination is to get excited about this stuff. Was there anything?
Ours too.
Yes, obviously. And I think that's part of the idea of looking for solutions in business. That's your mindset, is trying to figure things out. And when you find something that's a solution that's this powerful, it can be kind of overwhelming in a positive way. But were there things that also made you take a step back and say, wait a second, we need to be careful about this, and we need to tell our readers and our clients that this is something they need to be cautious about?
Yeah, I mean, look, if you don't have your holy shit AI moment and you're not utilizing it, go utilize it, get excited. And if you're not paying attention, AI has the potential to be an existential threat to humanity, period.
And somewhere in between the existential threat and the excitement is the fact that there's just a lot of unknowns and scary stuff, from bias to scams to the opportunity for this technology to get in the hands of bad people that will do bad things with it. And we thought, to your point, we did right away. We were like, I wonder if we should have a part of our book be about this. And we thought about that. We didn't decide not to do it because we didn't think it was important. To be honest, like, we never really fully got our head around it, and we still don't fully have our head around it, if we're being honest with you. I mean, we take it seriously, but we're, maybe that's our next book. I'm not kidding. Or maybe that's another thing for us to talk about, but we've spent a lot of time doing that homework as well. I mean, I'm glad that people are starting to realize how powerful this technology is going to be, but like disruption to society, to jobs, to welfare, on some, and mental health in some cases, like, they're really serious issues that we're still, like Andy said, we wouldn't be doing the topic justice if we didn't answer you honestly and say, like, yeah, it concerns us. And yet the genie's out of the bottle on some level. So we try to, on the one hand, talk about and be talk about this in as constructive of a way as we can for our listeners and our readers and our clients. But if you zoom out, like you said, there's a lot of conversations we as a society need to have. If you listen to like Eric Schmidt, who's a really great listen if you want to understand, I really encourage anybody to like just Google or YouTube, Eric Schmidt talking about this topic in the last 2 months. He's really lays out both the excitement and the transformational stuff for good, but also, the ways that this thing could get wonky. And Andy and I both encourage our clients and everyone who follows us to take that stuff seriously.
What are the key things that you walked away with from this process? What would you leave people with about the notion of this AI first mindset and how to apply it to business?
Well, the biggest thing we walked away with is the need to just start doing stuff. Appropriate to your question is our concluding chapter was with one of the leading experts in this field, Ethan Mollick, who's a professor at Wharton, wrote the book Co-Intelligence and has the One Useful Thing blog. And we did something interesting. The whole book was written almost like a journal, like our journey. And we were very transparent about what we were thinking and going through. And we also had a community. It was Harvard's first ever serialized book. So we were in the mode of interactive writing and building in the open this book and our learnings. And in that spirit, we talked to Ethan Mollick and said, here, professor, here's our homework. How did we do? Because you're one of our senseis in this whole thing. And he said, Andy likes to say, he kind of chastised us like a professor would, where he said, you didn't push hard enough. Like you're saying all the right things for today, but whatever you say today is going to be outdated in a few months with how fast this technology is moving. And you really need to ask your clients to go all in on this, at least to the extent of forming a AI lab and an AGI council and all these things. So we at the time were like, you're right, but people are barely using this. They're not going to get that, Professor Mollick. And he's like, no, you're wrong. Like, you're right. They're not going to get it, but your job is to push them. And we were left thinking he's right.
We did that interview. We finished the book. We submitted the book in September of last year, almost a year ago. And then the book came out approximately a month ago in July. And at the time, in June or July, Adam and I were talking, and we were talking about the last chapter that Adam just mentioned with Ethan Mollick. And we're like, wow, he was really, not only he chastised us, and at the time we were like, kind of like, Ethan, really? He was so right. So we wrote an epilogue at the end of that, and basically said he was totally right. You do need to be pushing harder because so much of the technology had advanced.
Yeah, and you include his comments in the book, to your point. I mean, he was not reading the complete book. In fact, he helped to complete the book for you.
That's right.
Yeah, that was the whole style of the book, right?
So thank you, Ethan.
It actually inspired us in our work every day with clients, which are, mostly these bigger companies, these mid-sized companies, that we tell that story. Like, look, it's going to feel like we're pushing you too hard, but to be honest, we probably aren't pushing you hard enough. We actually entitled the epilogue, We End Where We Started, right? Like, we started with Sam Altman saying, you guys are asking about marketing. I'm talking about AGI. Okay.
Holy shit.
Yeah. And we ended the book with Ethan Mollick saying, you guys are talking about people getting on this and forming councils and getting AI use policies and experimenting and having mindsets. But like, where's your lab? Where's your AGI council? So it felt like completing the circle for us, or whatever you want to call it, squaring the circle. And we were like, yeah, we need to push harder. And that's been sort of the theme of our talk track since then.
It's the growth mindset. It really is. You went on a journey in this book. You're still going on a journey, and you kind of lay it out transparently for readers to do it with you. My
takeaway, building on that, which I think you said very well at the beginning, which is the book could be summed up in like, okay, holy shit, go start using AI. You don't fall behind. That's essentially what the book in 12 chapters says. I think today, what I would say, what would I take away? No one knows what the birth of this alien intelligence means for the world, for our society, for business. We're all collectively on this journey. We're going to find out. But it's happening now, and so I think that uncertainty, like going back to the Bryce Chalamel, there's I actually thought that the conversation about the safety issues, and sort of Adam appropriately pointed out there's a big gap between the existential threat and just the massive uncertainty that this really rapid rise of human-born alien intelligence, I'm embracing that.
You're embracing the uncertainty and the journey.
And that's what I'm left with at the end of the book.
All right, Adam Brotman and Andy Sack. The book is AI First, the playbook for a future-proof business and brand. Thank you both very much for joining me.
Todd, it's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for listening, everybody. I'm GeekWire co-founder Todd Bishop. We'll be back next week with a new episode of the GeekWire podcast.